I guess I was thinking about Johnson. What was your comment when we first started? In terms of I would check in. What did you say?
Drag him out kicking and screaming.
Okay.
But now, I think that they're striking the right tone. In light of everything that's gone on and going on, presidency, health issues, the whole 9 yards. I think some conciliatory efforts are definitely appropriate. Um, it's not going to do them any good to come in shouting at this dude because he's not going to do anything any different than he's already done and that he's doing. So I think they strike the right tone. I don't think they should expect a concession either at any point.
Okay, I appreciate that. Dr. Randall and Nancy, what do you all think about whether or not the Biden team is struck the right tone?
Well, somebody said on cable news last night, silence indicates consent. The fact that he hasn't said anything at all can be interpreted as consent. That he is going to go. And in the Times today, they basically said that Trump didn't have the military behind him. If he had had the military behind him, he might have made good his plan, but he didn't. And so his plan is down the tubes as far as staying in office.
Yeah, my view kind of is that, until he's out, we don't really know, but there's no real way they're going to reverse this legally. And it's sort of hard to imagine why career politicians on either party would want to abolish what they have, which is a pretty good system. I mean, every single one of them gets elected. And if you stop using elections to do this, I mean, they got into power because they're elected. And I don't see why they would want to abolish that system. So I think they have a vested interest in continuing to have elections. So where's the support? And so I think that basically what Trump is doing is trying to create first of all, he's trying to raise money to pay off his debts and deal with not just his political debts for the election, but also for his next go, which is probably replacing Rush Limbaugh or something like that. And the other thing about it is that they've got a runoff election in Georgia where they need every single one of Trump's supporters to go out and vote to keep control of the Senate. So they have every reason to be, Trumpy for the next 70 days or something like that, or at least to January 5th. So and I think that there's none of these election states are less than 10,000 votes, so they're never going to reverse anything by recounts or anything else. It's not going to affect anything. So there's no legal way they're going to do this. There might be illegal ways because coups do happen, but I don't see it. I think it's unlikely anyway.
Okay. Well, it seems like.
Could I ask a question, please?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Randall, has there been some conversation about doing away with elections?
Well, what I'm saying is that the way coups are done in a lot of places, both the Nigeria and the Philippines, I was in places where constitutional democracies were overthrown by basically military. and abolish the vote, basically. And so it's possible to do that if people stop following the rules. But as far what I'm saying is that in order to do that, you have to have a lot of support somewhere in the population for doing that. And my guess is that most Republicans don't want to abolish that system either, which is to say that I don't see where you would get the kind of group of people who would want to abolish the election system. But that's the only way he could stay in power, is what I'm saying. He has no legal chance of reversing this. And he could talk about it, but none of the suits, there are no suits that have got any validity at all that would have any effect on the election. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, thank you for your clarification.
Okay, all
Hey,
right.
Bob, I have a question too, Omawali, if I can ask.
Yes, ma'am.
So Bob, what do you think of the strategy that the Trumpites are also pursuing in the state legislatures that are controlled by Republicans of pretty much voting in a different slate of electors, somehow disqualifying or whatever means? I'm not sure legally how they would do it. I don't think the legal thing matters to them as long as they can do it. So what do you think about that strategy, that certain states, Georgia being one of them probably, could just put up an alternate group of electors to vote for Trump?
Well, it's sort of the same thing. That's abolishing the vote a different way.
Yeah.
And
it's not as obvious, it's not as obvious.
So, well, I don't think, I mean, you asked this question, like, for example, in some state that would matter, like Pennsylvania or Michigan or somewhere like that. And it's hard to imagine that people in Michigan would like that being done by their legislature. And the legislature, those are all elected lawyers, basically. That's who's there. And why do they want to abolish their career, basically, or turn it into a circus? So I don't see their motivation. Do they really care that much about getting Trump elected versus their careers? So that's what I think. I mean, you can't be absolutely sure till it's done. But to me, you ask the question whether Dan Patrick, for example, and Texas didn't go blue, but somebody like Dan Patrick, who's really, bottom of the pile there, would he really want to undermine the Texas election system just to get Trump elected, let's say? I don't think so. I mean, I think he wants to stay doing just what he's doing and not go back to attending bar or whatever he was doing before. He likes this. He likes being what he is. So why jeopardize it? Because if he did, that's what would happen, right? I mean, there would be a lot of people who would be really ticked off. And so that's what I'm saying is I don't see the motivation there. Whereas I've seen it in both the Philippines and in Nigeria, there were huge ethnic groups that had grievances that did it. I mean, ethno-linguistic groups. And that's not what we've got here. I don't think.
Thanks, Bob.
Well, I appreciate that analysis. I think all of us are going to stay we're not gonna unfasten our seatbelts. We're gonna stay. I guess I want to say we're gonna be optimistic, but at the same time, we understand that things could go bad real quick because of something that we hadn't put in the calculus. So if that is the case, we've got to be able to respond. But I see that Bob Henschen is joining us from Protected Democracy. And one of the things that we wanted to happen is for Bob to give us a report on what has been the experience so far and what are the actions that are taking place going forward, and we can get an idea of how we can support those, what it is that we can do that would be in solidarity. So Bob, would you bring us up to speed?
Bob's muted, I think.
Yeah, I don't hear him either.
Well, there you go. That's what you have to do. Sorry. So thank you for inviting me. I would like to give you the update. Protect the Results is a national coalition that formed, spearheaded by Indivisible and Stand Up America, and it includes labor unions and environmental groups and, you know, all sorts of folks. And it has been putting out calls for events in cities across the country ever since this crisis became what it is today, a focus for the whole country. And so in Houston, we put together a coalition that has included Sunrise, Indivisible, Extinction Rebellion, Coalition of Unitarian Churches, MoveOn.org representative, and I'm leaving out all sorts of people, but anyway, a pretty good showing in terms of our coalitions. We had a first action a week ago, the Monday before the election, so a week ago this Monday, at the federal building when the legal case went to the federal court in Houston about trying to disqualify 127,000 drive-through voters. We had a good showing, I would say 50, 60, maybe more people, and very good media coverage that day. The day after Election Day, there was a national call for 5 p.m. and our group chose Allen Parkway as a gathering place. We had a really nice event, a peaceful event, a positive event. About 125 people, I guess. And we had one counter protester on a bicycle. So far, we haven't had the type of counter protest that we were concerned about. And so that was last Wednesday. And on Saturday, we had 2 or 3 major events in our area. We had one in Missouri City at 10 a.m. last Saturday. And then a follow-up at, and actually another one at 10 a.m. in Pearland. And then at 12 o'clock, we met in Emancipation Park and had another peaceful, positive, celebratory event because the results of the election were announced during that time. And once again, no counter protesters. So Houston is not the site of some of the things we've seen around the country, thank goodness. So our next plan was to target, now that we have the denial and the support for denial by Republican politicians, we've decided to target the 2 senators in Texas. Yesterday, we were at John Cornyn's office on Memorial at noon, and today at 5 we'll be at Ted Cruz's office, 1919 Smith, at 5 p.m. And our strategy now is basically to keep the issue in the public's eye and to keep the opposition to this denial and subversion strategy, and to put pressure on Republican lawmakers for what good it'll do to get them to tell the truth and tell Donald Trump to concede and to act the way a normal president would in defeat. On the other hand, we don't expect that to happen. I don't think anybody here expects that to happen. What we expect is exactly what we see. And so I think all I would say is we want to remain vigilant, as Omawale said, and I think we also need to remain mobilized and united. And so I would love to see folks out today at 5 to show your feelings about Ted Cruz's complicity with a subversion of democracy at the highest level at the worst possible time in human and natural history. And also we'll be meeting tomorrow night at 7, and we've been lucky to have representatives for a more perfect union in our circle, and we hope that you'll be there with us tomorrow night, and I'll be glad to send a link out to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any feedback for Bob?
Hey, Bob, we really appreciate what the coalition is doing. It's so needed. What was the event for tomorrow at 7?
Well, tomorrow is a meeting of the coalition to talk about next steps.
Oh, okay, meeting.
Yep.
Yeah, if I think Angela and Omawale and I have participated on different calls, and sometimes we don't have the link. I think the last one we had planned to be on, but could you help us with that part?
Absolutely. I will email you all 3 personally.
Okay, thank you so much.
You bet.
Okay, so here we are. I guess that the counter reaction that we had anticipated, we're happy that that did not develop, and nobody was put at severe risk or harm the body or limb from the county protesters. So this is a good thing. And we will be on the call tomorrow night. I'm not sure what our presence will be this afternoon, but let's just hold that in the hopper, because we don't know how that's going to develop this afternoon. But at any rate, thanks a lot, Bob, and give our best regards to everybody. Now, if we can just go ahead and move down the agenda. If we can move down to one of the things I want to say about the scenarios for refusal to transfer of power is one of the worst circumstances that we can think of is that if he barricades himself in and he refuses to leave, and United States Marshals have to be employed, a significant part of that 70 million that voted for him, especially the fanatical and maniacal elements of that, can create a lot of trouble. I pray that that's not part of the plan, but that should be a scenario that we need to think of. And also, since many of us sent out letters talking about the Protect the Democracy activism that was taking place, I think that we might have to follow up with a note to the people that we sent out the correspondences to, and let them know what this next phase is looking like, to keep them updated, because I sent my correspondences out to a coalition of folk, including community leaders and like ministers and other kinds of community-based organizations. And so we do have an obligation to let them know just where we are, because we might have to pull some support from them. It might be material support, and we might have to ask for some resources depending on what might happen going forward. So I'm going to get with Shara maybe and craft a brief note that we can send to those people that we sent those Protect the Democracy correspondences out to us over a week ago. Okay. Now let me ask this. In terms of, our conception is in terms of reimagining America, we are actually building the beloved community. That far more perfect union is an expression of the beloved community and the America that we want for the future. So I'm thinking that the first question that I have here is probably not necessary to spend any time, because I think that we are building a unified vision, but I think it's in real time and things are changing every day. So let's not deal with that, but we need to be clear about what ideas and values are we coalescing around. And I think that we do have a document. Maybe we need to resend the document. So I think that most of you have it somewhere in your directory or your catalog or your files, if you can pull it up. But if we need to resend that document in terms of reimagining the America that we want, the future America, we can send that. And that's just to make sure that we are pretty much on the same page about the direction that we are moving forward with. Do we need a mission statement?
Huh. Huh.
Okay, well, look, we can hold that. We don't have to answer that question right now, because the reimagination statement we have, it serves somewhat as a mission and vision statement. And also it's a charter for what it is to go forward. I'll make sure that everybody have that. We're gonna have to deal with it sometime if we go forward. Is that, do we need a structure? Do we need membership? We're an informal organization right now, kind of a loose crew. Let me ask everybody to, I hear some background noise from a few parties, so you might need to mute. But on this question of a structure and a membership, I don't know if we need to empower a subcommittee to address that or not. Give me your feedback.
If I guess my only thought is that right now, I think the work that and the focus on getting through, the next, 70 some odd days or however many are left. I think our focus is on the right place there. I think we have some documents that we kind of tentatively all said that we like. And I think that'll carry us through that next period. And maybe toward the beginning of the year, we can start thinking, because we'll know a lot more by the beginning of, by January 1, kind of where we are with this whole issue of transition. I think we'll have a much clearer picture and shift our focus then maybe to the structure. But I kind of like the way we're operating now. I think the informality of it is attractive to me personally, actually.
Okay, thank you.
I would just say also, and I agree with Shira on that, what I think works best if you're trying to build an organization is to talk about what are the set of problems that you're trying to deal with. What is wrong and what can be done about it. And when you create that, then asking somebody whether they would like to sign on to this or work with this or be a member of this is a lot easier to do. This is our program. And the mission statement, a lot of these are very short things which have to be very general. So you really need to spell out what it is you want to do. What is it that what are all the things that need to be done, and how do we think they should be done, at least generally? Anyway, that's my thought. And I think it's always, when you're talking about purposes of an organization, it's always good to have more than one purpose to get a lot done with an organization. And certainly there's a lot that needs to be done. So, right? I mean, I was just talking to Nancy this morning. I said, it's just ridiculous that a country like this has homeless and hungry. It's totally ridiculous. Yeah. It's shameful.
Yes, it is.
It's ridiculous that the globe has homeless and hungry.
Yeah. Folk, we in this land of plenty, and I know a lot of things stand out to us. I think that our charter, our proposed charter, does try to speak to what set of problems are we trying to address, the type of, what do we see as being wrong, as evidenced by you all talking about the homeless situation. But one of the things that I think that stands out about the formulation of, I should say, the configuration of this group, we're in a divided America, and part of the divide is racial and ethnic. And certainly there are some cultural aspects of the divide related to religion and values. But in terms of our configuration here, I think the fact that we're not that intergenerational, but what we have here is that we certainly have a good attempt to try to overcome the racial divide and the ethnic divide. And I think that in terms of the beloved community, given the fact that this has been a, I guess the question of race, the question of the color line has been with us since the founding of this nation, and we thought it would begin to recede in the 21st century, but it has not receded at all. So I think that that one of the things that we have to point out is that e pluribus unum, out of many one. That's the way that we that's the way that we are constructed here. Is that we have and plus the fact we probably have some different viewpoints within this group on a number of subjects. And so I think that that gives us an idea of the kinds of values that we're all about and the kinds of people. And I was just thinking about Bob Henschen being here, being a jazz musician. I kind of think about whether it's a combo or a big band, jazz represents the ultimate democracy. Does that make sense, Bob? I see him shaking his head.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so in other words, in terms of us going forward, we have friends, we have fellow activists in the community. I need to do another outreach to my Latino friends. But, you know, I guess I could get in a lot of trouble because I understand there's a lot of blowback to that term Latino. But at any rate, Latino, Hispanic, or whatever, but we need to reach out to our friends across the aisle and lock hands with them and see if we can bring them to the table, because that's going to be very important in reducing civil strife going forward is to have a, I guess I want to say a merger of many organizations, many ethnicities, many races going forward. So I think that I want to keep this multiracial characteristic of our founding and our informal operations. I think that we do need to keep that at the forefront. I think that we need to start thinking about protecting democracy if in fact there is emerging a basis for a bigger or greater or larger consolidation of people around the same interests as we go forward. So let's keep that in mind. I remember some of the groups that Bob mentioned. I remember a lot of other groups that were part of this, and so I think that we have something that is really valuable to our future with protect the democracy. And we're going to talk a little bit more going forward about what role or whether or not we can play a more expanded role with protect the democracy. Okay, well, I'm assuming that must have resonated just a little bit because nobody's throwing darts or shooting arrows, and I think that we're okay with that. We're okay with that. Now, these things that I have down here, because we've accepted the sentiment of Shara and Bob Henschen, that we continue as we are going forward, and let's look at trying to get to the installation of the Biden-Harris reign or program. So that's what we're going to try to do now. We're not going to think about any kind of big changes until we can get through this, what we're going to call a special period. The rest of the things that I have down here, I'm going to skip those because that's something for the future. But I did want to recommend that everybody look at the Edward Snowden Netflix drama that's on Netflix. Is absolutely riveting. And I also wanted to ask you if you can, through YouTube, if you can bring up GPS, which comes on CNN with Fareed Zakaria on Sundays. They are actually talking about what might be emerging in the United States. And they have some expert people and people from different cultures. So you might want to bring that up. Charlotte, are you still there? Okay.
I am.
Okay, Charlotte. So what we do, we have a little time left, about 15 minutes.
Okay.
May I enter? Hey, Angela, how you doing? Yeah, so good to see you. Unmute. Angela, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Good to be with you all.
Yeah, how mama and daddy doing?
You know, they're hanging tough. Thank you.
And Wendy, how you doing? Unmute. Hello, Wendy.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Well,
How is Jimmy? Fred's good too on Veterans Day.
yeah, Jim is doing pretty good. She fell last week and took a pretty serious fall in the bathroom, and so we kind of nursing her back from that fall that she took. But we're gonna see a physician and see if anything going on in neurology, neurologically.
Yeah.
But she's okay, Wendy.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Well, look, people, since we have a little time, I was going to I kind of need to reward Charlotte because she did a lot of work and put this together. And she put it together, I think, in a way that would not expand in the daylight between any views that you might have about reproductive control or contraception, etc. But what we were concerned about, what I was concerned about is that, I don't know if you know, but Representative Peters, he did win his re-election. I think he's from Montana, but at any rate, his wife about, I guess about 25 years ago, got into a complicated pregnancy. And the hospital board and the ethics committee would not prevent her to have an abortion because of the just internal ethics at the board. But anyway, she waited around about 3 weeks later, and she was told that it was a question of her life or the baby's life. And so they had to make a decision. And by virtue of the fact that there are groups that are supporting Amy Barnett, they want to ban all medically necessary abortions and in vitro fertilization. I thought that we needed a presentation on what that would mean, particularly with a reference to the Supreme Court. But I told Charlotte not to address anything that would be controversial. that might cause a schism within the group. So I wanted her to be very, very delicate and stay with the request for just to deal with the medically necessary abortions and the in vitro fertilization. And I think that she has abided by that. So I think that we have enough time for Charlotte to do her presentation. Are you ready, Charlotte?
I am. One thing I would like is to have Cassie put up the outline only. Cassie, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here. I have it up.
Okay, if you could put up the outline only. I'm looking at the presentation. Okay, there it is. Okay. Again, good afternoon to everyone. One of the things we have originally, I put this together prior to the election. We all held our breaths and we made it through the election, and we'll see how that turns out. But one of the things that continues to be one of the hot topics during all elections primarily is the issue of reproductive systems and women's health. Now, pro-life versus pro-choice continues to be of utmost importance, as well as in vitro fertilization and the push to criminalize in vitro fertilization and necessary abortions and when it is a medical necessity. As we know, in spite of anyone's personal views, religious or otherwise, there are times when a medically necessary abortion has to take place. And I'm gonna make this brief, but by the end of my presentation, I'm hoping that we can agree on at least 3 things. One is that women's health should always be made by physicians, or women's health decisions by physicians or others who make up a medical team. Abortions and other procedures can be necessary for a woman's health, including the difference between life and death. And science should always reign over politics. In some of the items that continue to be at the forefront, I've already named, and I'm going to start with medically necessary abortions. And they do exist outside of the political concept of pro-life and pro-choice. Pregnancy can often be very stressful on a person's body and can worsen pre-existing conditions such as renal failure or cardiac disease to the point where they greatly compromise a woman's health and can even cause death. As every pregnancy is different, physicians must determine the most appropriate level of medical intervention. And according to this joint statement released by the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecology, there are situations where pregnancy termination in the form of an abortion is medically necessary. And it can preserve life and save a life and preserve health. From a strictly medical standpoint, a doctor's duty for providing care is to his patient, which even in the cause of pregnancy remains the mother. When the safety of the life of the mother is endangered, it is necessary that doctors focus on the health and well-being of their patient first and foremost. According to WebMD, in vitro fertilization, or IVF, is a procedure that has produced more than 200,000 babies in the US since 1981. Perhaps you know couples who have tried to have babies and ended up having in vitro fertilization. It could be used to treat infertility due to endometriosis, low sperm counts, and other problems. IVF is an expensive procedure and tends to be used as a last resort after the potential use of fertility drugs, surgery, and artificial insemination. Now, there has been a push by some to criminalize in vitro, and based on the rhetoric of scientific fact, during the IVF process, multiple eggs are fertilized in a lab before viable embryos are implanted in the patient. The reason for the push for criminalization is embryos which are found to be less than viable or to have certain markers for genetic diseases are discarded. There are many misconceptions about how they're discarded. This is the heart of the matter. The criminalization of the discarded embryos, according to E. Feinberg, MD, an associate editor of Fertility and Sterility, a leading fertility journal. A lot of our success with in vitro has really been in the absence of government restrictions. She says, I would argue it's more pro-life to have healthier babies and healthier mothers. See, I don't want to leave anything off here. And I'm gonna allow you all to ask a few questions. I think we may have a couple of minutes here. And if you have questions, please feel free. Any questions?
Or comments?
Or comments?
It was very informative for me, particularly understanding, some of the political discussion around these specific issues of medically necessary abortions. And I was not really that familiar with the IVF debate. So it was very informative. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay,
Any
Charlotte.
more questions or comments? Go ahead.
Mrs. Lee, thank you for the presentation. It was really very informative.
Thank you.
My only comment is that as a man, I really don't have a say in women's productive rights. That's just my opinion. And politics definitely ought not be a part of the process. I think the right is trying to criminalize issues that they believe are evangelically correct. If that's a good phrase, but I think they're on the wrong side of history.
Well, I think in response to that, that's one of those things that Amawali talked about when he says, you don't want to get too into stuff that's going to open up, I hate to use the term can of worms, but something that you don't want it to become combative or a combative issue, if I may. But at the same time, you can inform people and we can all be educated. And, but at the same time, not become antagonistic.
Yeah.
As they say, the old saying goes, we can all agree to disagree. And, but this is exactly what you're saying. That's what my presentation is really about. And that is that nobody else should be able to make those choices for you. That at the end of the day, it should be the mother's choice. And of course, if there is a spouse, then that spouse plays a big part in that.
Well, Charlotte, I want to thank you. I'm glad that you put that subordinate clause on there. If there is a spouse, so Johnson, with all due respect to what it is that you said, there is a school of thought that I represent that part of my genetic material is out there. And so there is, it's incomprehensible to me as to how that can be a one-person decision when you have genetic material from two people. So I'm saying, at least I got to be at the table to discuss it. It makes sense to me. So, but then again, that is a point for you and your companion, or you and the father of the baby, or whomever, to discuss that. But I'm glad that we have this discussion because it is going before the Supreme Court, these issues that Charlotte talked about, and we need to have this. Charlotte, you did a wonderful job. And
thank you.
I'm glad that you didn't inflame things any further than you did. Okay, that's why we asked you. And look here, something wrong with your camera where I can't see you. I wanted to kind of give my regards or thanks to you without taking a look at you. But I want to thank you profoundly and profusely for accepting a delay on that. So folk, I think again, I'm going to encourage people again, let's keep in touch with each other in between the meetings that we have. And if you have material that is going to be illuminating about what is in fact developing in the country. Share that material with as many people as you can. You do have phone numbers. You can call people and you can also talk to folk. I'm going to try to have Ms. Tolu available for the 18th. So if you have any questions about the vaccines, because my understanding is that there's a second vaccine that's going to follow from Moderna in a matter of days or weeks. So at any rate, Ms. Tolu, being a global health specialist and epidemiologist, she should be able to answer all of our questions on the 18th. Anybody have any other concerns that we need to put on the agenda for the 18th?
Yeah, let's start a discussion about terminating the Electoral College.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Johnson, I appreciate that. And I tell you what, I hope that I hope that you'll take the lead and kind of give us a pro and con of both sides of that issue about the Electoral College. So will you lead that discussion?
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay, so I'm gonna put down here, Johnson's gonna lead. Does anybody else have any concerns that we need to put in place for the 18th especially?
I would just say the monitoring of the runoff races, the senatorial races in Georgia. I think I'm sure every day we're following that as much as possible, but it would be helpful for us to contemplate whatever the developments are together.
Yeah. And please.
I was just going to say, I totally agree. And I think whatever, pennies, dimes, quarters, dollars, whatever we have that we can contribute to those two races, I don't see a better way to put any extra change we have than there. And if there are ways, sometimes there are organizations too that we might support that are on the ground there. Anything that Stacey Abrams is doing has certainly been pretty effective. So I would, stay tuned to her. But we need to really kind of encourage people, spread the word about how important it is. I mean, we're not in Georgia, but it doesn't matter because what happens there is going to affect all of us.
Even the issue that was just raised as it relates to the Electoral College. I mean, we can't do any of that without the Senate, without controlling the Senate.
Well, actually, there is a way.
Okay, great. I'm looking forward to that discussion. All right.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for the bright light at the end of the call.
Okay. All right then. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Amawale, just one thing. Did anyone else see the stuff on CNN about the postal worker who was caught with the mail in his truck? He had ballots, mail-in ballots in his truck. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was in Buffalo, New York.
There might have been two incidents then, sister. Because I read an article and saw a news report yesterday in regard to a postal worker who recanted.
Yes, I saw that.
What he said or what he claimed happened. So I don't know. I'm not sure. These are the same.
Yeah, this guy, he was stopped by the police for something like a traffic, some kind of traffic stop. Mm-hmm. And when they looked in the truck, he had bags of, how many of it? 8,000 ballots. And he first said the mail was for he and his mother, until they looked further and saw exactly what it was. And But I just wondered how that's going to affect, or if it can affect the outcome of the election, or I don't know what he could have been thinking, but I don't know, but I believe it was in New York. Either way, he's in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yesterday, if I could add this, I don't know if anyone saw in the local news here in Houston, but Dan Patrick, I think Bob mentioned Dan Patrick, and he should want to keep the system going. But there's actually a Republican kind of bounty that they put out. He announced a $1 million award for anybody that could bring a viable case of voter fraud. So they're offering the public $1 million. And I'm sure the way it's worded, you're probably not going to get $1 million. I think that's to get the attention, because as he kept talking, depending on whether the award led to a conviction or not, there were all these other points that you could at least get 25,000. So they're going to put their money up. So it's it's kind of crazy. And I did, I think Miss Brantley might share an article from this morning's Chronicle.
I got it.
About, okay. Yeah, that was a really good article going back to what we can expect, and that we're still in a tenuous situation.
Thank you. Absolutely. Well, folk, we just about at our contracted time. And I think that we've covered some good ground. I've urged some of you, if you have not seen Dave Chappelle on Saturday Night Live, maybe you can catch it on YouTube. It's comedy like with a cause, with a purpose, like I haven't seen since Lenny Bruce and Dick Gregory. But anyway, you might want to check out the Dave Chappelle on Saturday Night Live. But folk, we basically at the end of the road. And let's try to get geared up for the 18th. I'll be working with some of you all on putting together an agenda that would be appropriate. And I will also be trying to bring back some people who are very important to what we're going to do going forward, try to bring them back to the table. And Bob, given the, I guess, the septuagenarian nature of our configuration here, if there's anything that we can do without actually being on our feet at the demonstration, I think that we mentioned that we'd like to be in solidarity. If you have other needs that we can speak to, don't hesitate to talk to us about that. But we will stay tuned. I'm certain that we'll be with you once we get the link on the next call.
Okay, I just emailed you and Angela and Shara. I didn't have your email address, so I assume they'll forward it to you. You can put yours in the chat now, and I put it on my files. But absolutely, we appreciate your support, and I appreciate you being in our planning meetings as well. If you can continue to participate, that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, we're gonna have our checkouts. So I'm looking at you, Nancy Edwards. I'm gonna let you check out first.
Happy to see that things have gone as well as they have so far. And I'm not giving up my wariness, but things are looking good so far.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Gary?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I would say so far so good.
Ms. Carter?
Let's give all the support we can to Warnock and Nassau.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, sir. David Johnson.
I got one question.
Yes, sir.
When I finish with my presentation, should I forward it to Ms. Brantley?
Yeah, if you like, if you're gonna do a PowerPoint or you're gonna have images that you want to display, I think you should forward them to Ms. Brantley. But if you're not gonna have anything you want to display, you probably can get by she can do something where she can give permission to use your screen, but it might not be a bad idea as a backup to let Ms. Brantley have it.
Okay, Ms. Brantley, would you send me your email address in the chat? And am I getting out where it is? Let's stay positive.
Okay, I'll send it now.
Thank you.
Ms. Brantley, we're gonna let you check us out. Well, Bob is already kind of gave us something to check out with. So Ms. Brantley, we're gonna let you check us out.
And just continue to keep your faith.
Okay, and I want to thank you so much for being a host for us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll be together on the 18th. God bless.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Wally.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, Charlotte, thanks
Bye
again.
bye. Thank you.